Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Thursday sleepless morning over here from Helsinki, Finland. The sun is now rising at 4:30 a.m., so it is massively painful for myself, but there are a few new things to be speaking about today, so I want to get into it nice and quick. Before we do that, I should humbly request that if you do find this content valuable, or if you just want to get back, the best way to do that is simply like the video. If you're feeling extremely generous, you can always share it, and if you decide that you don't like the video at a later date, you can always just like it as well. Anyways, with that in mind, let's just jump into it right now. Let's waste no more time, and let's start it off with the same thread of analysis that we've been rolling off for the past 3 days here. Actually, bless you, sir. Anyways, we've been looking at the hidden bearish divergence on 6-hour timeframes and less for, well, CME and basically all exchanges actually. And that was running over here. We've seen that slowly but surely kind of play out, almost down to our targets, which was in the low $28,000. Bitcoin seems to have a low thus far of about 28,500 or so. So, could you argue close enough is close enough in this case? I do think that you could argue that contingent upon an invalidation point that we'll get into in a second here. But for right now, I would still say that there is a cautionary move still down around that region as Bitcoin does, still have to kind of play off these moves over here. Both the 6-hour and the 4-hour still showing the same sort of divergences right there. And as long as the 6-hour stochastic momentum is to the downside, as you can see right here, which will be consistent as long as Bitcoin's below about 29,900, I would still say that there is a good threat of a move slightly lower. I also want to be on record as saying, even if Bitcoin does test down around there, I do think that the downside in the short term is limited. I do think that Bitcoin's more likely to bounce out of this range to the upside in a somewhat significant way, I would say, before playing out like any significant downside, if it will. So it's like it can go up and go down. So let's come up with that invalidation, or I guess I just kind of did right there. Any sort of a medium-term time frame closure above about 29,900. Yes, I do think that Bitcoin very likely at that point to forgo the full-on test down to that 618 Fibonacci retracement right here, which was kind of judging that in this case right here, and very likely make a nice move up at minimum to 31 short term, and then probably make a nice move, a nice continuation move after a short term pullback there, somewhere around about 32.5 to 33,000 bucks. Anyways, let me just adjust over here as I realize I'm actually in a trade at the current moment in time, so I should probably handle that. All right, there we go. Uno momento as let's see, where exactly are we? Okay, I see, lovely. Okay, there we go. All right, and back onto my notes over here. Okay, and yes, where was I? Okay, so yes, we spoke about invalidation. We spoke about still the relevance of that target, and now let's speak about the higher term timeframes here, and sort of what I'd be looking for to kind of judge this next likely bounce to the upside. So first and foremost, one of the reasons why I do think that the downside is kind of limited is that we are working off of extremes officially now on the daily BBWP for CME. Obviously, spot price action was already there as of a few days ago, but now we see the BBWP below the moving average right here on CME as well, which is, in my opinion, the most important exchange. And so what do we typically expect after something like that? A contraction phase, which likely equates to a corrective phase. And in that case, a corrective phase within the context for current trend likely means a bit of a bounce to the upside. Now, I would not call a macro reversal here at all whatsoever, but I do think that Bitcoin could have some, interesting and somewhat significant upside from these levels. So what would essentially govern that in this case? Well, the reason why I'm sort of leaning into that sort of an idea is based off of this chart right here, the 5-day volatility versus momentum chart. And this one is a big one for me. I'll briefly go over it yet again. The 5-day BBWP signature has essentially, treated us quite well. And anytime that we have seen 5-day BBWP, again, a measurement of volatility, the dispersion of returns, get down into the, the mid-teens or so and expand from there, it's led to an average move of about 45% during the course of 40 days. We got pretty much exactly that on the last signal, that was kind of governing our sort of bias that Bitcoin likely plays down somewhere around mid to low $20,000 from that $45,000 or $48,000 high right here. Played out about 47% to the downside and about 40 days actually as well. So the new information that I want to present on this particular video is what to expect kind of after that, given the statistics from this, or statistical analysis, I suppose a little bit more on the quantitative analysis side of things. Anyways, what I've done now is I've measured out both the time in days and then the percentage that the mean reversion play happens after the, after that signal has played out, the original signal has played out. So for example, in this case right here, after this signal in May plays out to the downside, the mean reversion bounce to the upside was, almost 30% done over the course of 10 days. So I've already gone ahead and done that for all of the prior iterations. And in this case, we have seen that the mean reversion, if we were to include all of those, so both the upside and the downside ones is, again, we have 2 up and 2 down, then we'd kind of expect an average counter move of about 31.1%. That would put Bitcoin somewhere around like 32,500 to 33,000 bucks actually. If we were to include only the downside moves, the mean reversion a little bit more in that case, and that kind of does make theoretical sense, but about 38.12%, which would put Bitcoin somewhere around 35,000 bucks. And if we were to average out the days that it takes, it was 10, 15, 15, 15, technically 1375. You can see that 15 shows up many times here. So we're still in our first sort of 5-day stint, which will be ending tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern time, or sorry, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So we'd likely be looking for that move statistically to play out sometime around like, early June-ish, first, second week of June, essentially, if I'm doing my mental math properly here. Anyways, now that we got that out of the way, we should align these sort of average moves here and see if they align with anything else. So let's go pop back into this chart over here and see what areas of interest would be to the upside. So in this case, what I did is I drew a fib. Let me just get rid of this for the time being. And we can see that the 382 comes out where? 32.5. That sounds familiar. And the 0.5 comes in at 35,000 bucks. So I do think that's, probably best case scenario. And that also happens to be one of the gaps, or the last gap on CME that we do see from the 6th of May, actually. So very important right there. I do think that upside would be very much limited. And you could probably expect short-term pullbacks at minimum around these major levels as well. So now that we got that out of the way, should we talk about anything new here? Yes, I do want to talk about one thing that is essentially confluential with what we've focused in on this video, and that would be the Dixie chart. So Dixie typically plays opposite of Bitcoin, especially on the higher term timeframes here. I think that the relationship on the lower term timeframes is, not as well documented, but on the higher term timeframes, yeah, there does seem to be an inverse relationship, daily and above especially. So in this case, Dixie did hit our upside targets and is now looking like it is going to initiate a bit of a pullback. So what am I judging for that? Well, both the daily and the weekly BBWP are coming off of like extremes here. Weekly is about to go below the moving average probably in the next like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, something like that. And that initiates very likely a corrective phase. So a bit of sideways and down from our current levels. Now, that would naturally imply Bitcoin, likely does try a bit of upside, which, if Bitcoin wants to make a move towards 30, basically 33 or 35 within that next month or so time frame, completely fine. I mean, that would kind of make sense here. But in the very short term timeframes on the daily, you can see that while it is certainly losing momentum, like no doubt about that, it is losing momentum right here and looks like it does want to come back on down. It even looks like it's, in the midst of putting in a bit of a head and shoulders. I suspect that it's probably got one more short-term try to the upside and probably gets rejected somewhere at least below like 104.5. See something like that, very likely to come down in the following weeks. What am I essentially basing off of? You would naturally have a bit of hidden bullish evidence right here. So I want to see like one more spike up, get slammed down, and then trade back below about 103. At that point, I'm looking for a corrective move down to 101.5-ish, give or take. And then come back to it after that. And that would likely kind of align with what I'm thinking on Bitcoin, like very short term, maybe one more try a little bit lower. In this case, that would be, your official test maybe around somewhere around the 618, so low 28, upper 27 in this case, and then hopefully, the LARP line plays out here, and then we get that bounce, and then maybe roll on over after that. I don't think I want to get into like super macro stuff here just yet. Did a bit of that on Twitter yesterday as a bit of a fun endeavor, and got a lot of people very angry, which is interesting. It's like, I'm angry at your analysis. Like, all right, okay, fair enough. More power to you, man. Anyways, before I get on that tangent, what I want to say about this, yes. So this would naturally bring up one major, massive, humongous invalidation, basically. Any sort of a medium or especially a higher term time frame closure below the 618, basically 28,000 bucks, I would negate everything I said about the upside. It probably in like the next month or so, let's say, to follow, and Bitcoin, more than likely will retest somewhere down around our current lows, maybe even make slightly new lows as well. At that point, we'll come back to it and kind of look at it with fresh eyes. But I do think that this is a little bit less likely to happen based off the statistical analysis of this asset for the time being. So I think that's a good place for me to leave off on this video. I want to quickly shill my Instagram. I've actually been putting a bit more effort into it recently and will continue to do more in the not so distant future. You can find a link in the description below. Any other account that is similar to mine, because there's a bunch of like scammers on there, is not me. I don't have any secret trading funds. I can assure you of that. My hand's fucking full trading my own accounts right now for for the love of God. And then also, what else? Yes, Bybit. I do have a Bybit shill link in the description below as well. They have like some sort of a deposit bonus going on. Understand that leverage trading exchanges, while they can be great in the hands of, of someone experienced, it's probably going to end in tears for someone who does not already have a working strategy. So as far as working strategies go, you do not need to spend any fucking money or risk any trading equity at all to get that under your belt. You can do that with pen and paper. You can do that with Microsoft Excel, or you can even do it for free over here on the Krown Chain application, which is in the link description below as well in the trading journal, and does it all for you quite literally. So there you go if you so desire. Other than that, is there anything else that I want to say? No, I think I'll leave it right there. Basically, above 29.9, good. Below 28,000, bad. Until then, does Bitcoin have one more short-term move to the downside and then try for a rally? I think a little bit more likely right there, but hey, anywhere above 29.9, and I would actually be looking for the upside to play out, and I'd say that this is your next low here for a little bit of time. Anyways, with that said, I want to wish you well, take care, and see you hopefully soon.